Have you ever had the experience of looking at something and thinking that you know what you're looking at, only to find that what you thought you were seeing was actually something completely different? Maybe you changed position or something just flipped in your perception, and then you realised your mind had tricked itself. What you were seeing was an illusion. It happened to me once, years ago, when I was working on a kibbutz in Israel. A kibbutz is like a kind of socialist commune where young people can come and work and be part of the community in exchange for a bed and food. So the day we got there, I went with a friend of mine. We were shown to our digs, which was a very basic bungalow. It had 3 bedrooms for volunteers, which along with the bathroom opened onto a communal porch area with a sink. The porch area opened to the outside. There was a doorway, but there wasn't a door, it was just an archway, and then you were outside. So we used to leave the light on in the porch all night so people could go to the bathroom and see where they were going. That meant that when you were standing in the porch, outside the doorway or archway, you really couldn't see anything, it was just black, because being in the brightly lit porch took out your night vision. So one night, I was going to the toilet in the middle of the night. I went out of my room into the porch, which I had to walk across, so I had to walk past the open archway. And when I looked outside, I saw something that made me freeze on the spot, just outside the door. And this is what I saw. This is just an artistic impression. It's not exactly right, but it's close enough to what I saw. A creature with 3 legs, arranged as a tripod, with an enormous head like a bull, and it was staring straight at me with a look of total menace in its eyes. So I stood there for a while, telling myself that I was not really seeing what I was seeing. I knew I must be looking at something normal that was outside the door, and that my eyes were playing tricks on me. So I stood there for a good probably 30 seconds, trying to make this thing not be what I was seeing. But I couldn't do it. The more I stared at it, the more real it got. It was inexplicably real, and it was staring at me. So I decided I'd go to the toilet, and when I come back, I would see it properly. The bull would be gone. But when I came back and I stood in the same place, there it was, exactly as before. Now, I have to say that we'd been in the kibbutz for about 2 weeks by this point, and some pretty weird things had already been going on. So me and my friend were quite spooked out really by this place. The very first day we got there and we were shown to our room, both me and my friend looked out the window to see what sort of view we had, and we both saw about 40 metres outside our back window a dead dog lying right by the side of the road. It looked like a dead Labrador. Well, we looked at each other and we just thought, that's really weird. And afterwards, when the guy had gone, we went out to see this dead dog because we couldn't understand why it had been left there and nobody had picked it up. So when we got there, it wasn't a Labrador at all. It was an old sack full of, I don't know what was in it, but it was just a brown sack. So we went to bed that night. That was our first night there. And as we're lying there in the dark trying to go to sleep, what sounded like a pack of wolves howling started. And we later found out we were living in the region of Galilee, in the Golan Heights. And there's stray dogs there. There's wild dogs that get together in packs and they howl, and it sounds exactly like wolves howling. So that was spooky enough. But we went to sleep. In the middle of the night, I was woken up by my friend in a whisper going, "Wake up, wake up, wake up." So I said, what is it? And he said, "There's a dog in the room. There's a dog in the room." So I turned on the light because the light was actually happened to be right by my bed on the wall. I turned on the light and there was nothing there. And this started happening over and over again. It happened several times. My friend would wake me up in the night and say, "A dog's come into the room." He'd wake me up, I'd turn the light on, there was nothing there. So at this point I'm thinking, well, I know this guy quite well, but we've never actually been anywhere together, and maybe he just has some issues that I really didn't know about. And then one night, it happened to me. I'm lying there in my bed, in the dark, and I hear as clear as crystal a big dog padding into the room. I can hear its paws scratching against the lino. It trots into the room. It sits down right next to my bed, and I'm hearing, loud and clear, the panting of a big dog about 2 feet from my head. So I turn the light on. Nothing. There's nothing there. On another night, the dogs had been howling, and I was going to sleep, and something happened to my feet. My feet suddenly felt strange. They went icy cold, heavy as lead, and an energy came up through my feet, and it gradually crept up my legs, paralysing me as it rose up my body. It was absolutely terrifying. It got to the point where it was just coming into the middle of my body, and I managed to sort of rouse myself out of this state of paralysis and verbalise something to my friend, and that woke me up. It snapped me out of it. By the time I got to see the bull creature, and we'd been there a couple of weeks, me and my friend were already pretty spooked out. We were thinking this place is haunted by some kind of dog spirit. So anyway, there I am, looking at this evil tripedal bull creature again and again. I couldn't see it as anything other than what was appearing before me. So I thought there's only one thing for it. I had to go outside and see what it was. And as I moved towards the door, the bull quickly dissolved. By the time I was standing in the entrance, I could see what it was. It was a metal chair with someone's coat left draped over it. So why am I telling this story? Just to illustrate this point. Sometimes you can feel certain about what you're looking at, but it turns out you were completely wrong. In certain instances, when you change the point from which you're viewing something, what you're viewing can appear completely different. It's always possible that there's more to a thing than what immediately meets our eye. We might assume that we're seeing something as it is, but our perspective can be limited, our viewpoint too narrow. It's always possible some of our assumptions might be mistaken, that there's more to the picture than what we've been seeing up until now. If that's the case, in order to see the bigger picture, what needs to happen is our perspective needs to change. In the instance of the evil bull creature, when I overcame my fear and revulsion and took a few steps towards to investigate, my perception changed. I saw that my initial perception had been an illusion. And I use this physical illustration to make a metaphysical point. As long as you remain standing in the same place, you see one thing. But when you move forwards to check out more closely what you think you're looking at, everything changes. The delusion dissolves and the truth gets revealed. It's all about where you're standing, your viewpoint. It's about your world view. Do you believe there's a spiritual dimension to life? There can come a point in life when the search for truth, not just ideas and intellectual concepts, but a real, direct, radical encounter with spiritual truth, becomes the most important thing that there is. A lot of people are now seeking something above and beyond what our materialistic culture has to offer. Whether you think of that thing as God, spirit, enlightenment, people are looking for connection, contact with some higher or deeper dimension to life, because many of us feel, we just know somehow, that there is a spiritual dimension to life. And we have also come to know that it's only there that real peace and life and happiness and fulfillment is going to be found. Fulfillment, it means being filled to full. Spiritual fulfillment means being filled with spirit. If you're someone who's drawn to seek fulfillment through spirituality, if you're anything like me, it's because you have a sense of not being full, a sense of emptiness or inner lack. It might be more pronounced at some times in your life than at others, but it's there like a kind of backdrop to existence. You might say that this sense of emptiness is a driving force behind the whole field of human endeavour, men and women through history, trying to fill or make up for the lack of fullness in various ways. Through achievement, recognition, fame, through relationships, romantic love, friendship, community, groups of like-minded people with common interests getting together. Through knowledge, philosophy, psychology, political ideologies and causes, social engineering schemes, through culture, music, entertainment, sports, travel, through pleasure, money, sex, power, drugs. These are some of the world's solutions to meet the need for connection and the existential unease that comes from a sense of not being connected. The trouble is, as super successful celebrities often testify, these solutions ultimately don't work. You can have pretty much everything the world has to offer and still find you're not fulfilled, you're not connected on a deep level to the source of being. Jet-set lifestyle, artistic achievement and recognition, money, record deals, girls. What more could a young man in the 1960s ask for? Jesus said the truth will set you free. It's only when you've looked everywhere possible, when you've exhausted all the possibilities, that the impossible happens. The song isn't about some particular person. When he says, "I've done all these things only to be with you," He's talking about God. In an interview with Rolling Stone, Bono said it was an anthem of doubt more than faith. One music journalist called the song a potent contemporary hymn. It's a song about searching for meaning or transcendence. And to me, the most interesting thing about it is that you don't find it. It's about the search. Well, this journalist may have found searching desperately for something you can't find interesting. But personally, I don't call it interesting or inspiring. I'd rather actually find what I'm looking for. So can you relate to this song? Have you still not found what you're looking for? Do you feel a bit like a stranger in a strange land? But the strange land which you find yourself running or crawling through, but finding no permanent resting place, isn't just the culture or your circumstances. It's you, your very self. The writer and philosopher C.S. Lewis, author of the Narnia books, wrote, "If we find ourselves with a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that we were made for another world." What is this spiritual homeland we feel like we were born for but can't seem to find in any definitive and lasting way? This thing that artists and mystics and philosophers through the centuries have climbed mountains and scaled city walls in order to find. Jesus called it the kingdom of heaven. This is what his message was all about. When he travelled around teaching, this is what he was teaching about, the kingdom of heaven. He also called it the kingdom of God. Jesus travelled from one town or city to another, proclaiming the good news about the kingdom of God. Jesus told them, "I must preach the good news of the kingdom of God in other towns too, because that is why I was sent." Jesus went through Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. Jesus told many parables about the kingdom of heaven, and I'd like to share just one. It's about what it's like to find the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought that field. So if you're seeking spiritual truth and experience, has what Jesus describes here happened for you? What's portrayed by this parable isn't a fleeting experience, like a temporary altered state of awareness that one can fall into and then fall back out of again, resulting in more frustration. The man in this parable finds the treasure, goes straight home, comes back and buys that field. Now it belongs to him. He owns it. Once this is found, you can't lose this treasure again. It's not going anywhere. He owns it. It's his. The treasure within belongs to him, and it changes everything. Two things come across clearly in this parable. Firstly, that it's a very definite thing. It's sudden and it's absolutely certain. There's no question of the man not being quite sure about what he's found and how valuable it might be. He's so certain about its value, and it gives him so much joy that he immediately sells everything he has. Secondly, is that it's a story of before and after. The parable starts, "The kingdom of heaven is like." Jesus is saying that finding or entering the kingdom of heaven is a complete transition. Finding the kingdom changes a person's whole position and outlook on life from that moment on. That is the point. The man was quite poor, now he's unimaginably rich. After discovering this priceless treasure, life will never be the same again. I used to have this recurring dream where I found a suitcase stuffed with money, millions, tens of millions. The feeling of joy was indescribable. It was like the biggest experience of joy, excitement, and thankfulness you can possibly imagine. But then immediately that I'd found it, I'd wake up, and that joy was instantly replaced by a sinking feeling of total disappointment. Well, says Jesus, the kingdom of heaven is like finding a suitcase with more money in it than you can ever possibly spend, only there isn't the letdown of finding out that it wasn't real. The result of finding the treasure of the kingdom is that without a second thought, the man sells everything else for it. Jesus is saying, when you find this, compared to this, everything you previously valued suddenly becomes worthless by comparison. Things that all your life you felt were important suddenly mean nothing. You don't need them anymore. This is infinitely more valuable than the things that you previously felt were precious and were attached to. So much so that you'd give it all away for this without batting an eyelid. Its worth is incomparable, that's the point. Nothing the world has to offer can come anywhere near this. It's all worthless by comparison. In selling all he has, the man becomes rich, not for a week or for a year, but once and for all. That's the kind of transformation pictured in this parable. That's what Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like. A lot of people are looking for life-changing spiritual realization, but something of this order of transformational power hasn't happened yet for them. And the question I want to address now is this: why not? Why is it that many people who are sincerely seeking haven't found the spiritual treasure that Jesus is pointing to in this and other parables? So here's a few possible reasons. 1. Is it because life-changing spiritual breakthrough and awakening are very difficult to attain? Is sustained spiritual work needed to access the kingdom of heaven? Are years or even successive lifetimes of spiritual practice necessary to reach ultimate truth? Do I need to do hundreds or thousands of hours of meditation, inner work, processing traumas, releasing emotional blocks, restructuring my thought patterns? Does the hidden treasure lie at the end of a long journey and process? Is that how spirituality works? Is it a matter of climbing one step at a time towards the light, which someday, hopefully, might become a full-blown reality for me personally? Maharishi Mahesh Yogi said, quote, "No one succeeds without effort. Those who succeed owe their success to perseverance. Meditation depends upon the strength of mind. It must be unceasing. Having a particular time for it is meant for novices." He's saying, until you're basically practicing a state of meditation all the time, you're just a beginner on the spiritual path. You're not even anywhere near the goal. So is the kingdom of heaven reserved only for the supremely disciplined and strong-minded, the psychic supermen and women? Does the physical vessel, this body and mind, have to be purified first for the kingdom of heaven to manifest? Does eating the right food have any role in it? Or practicing forms of subtle energetic exercise like yoga, qigong or martial arts? Will these practices eventually lead me to that place of inner finding? I once had a conversation with a Hindu meditation teacher. And I said to her that I'd been practicing meditation daily for 15 years, and I felt that at the end of those 15 years, I was in exactly the same place I was before I started. There had been no real transformation, although I'd had some isolated experiences of altered states. I was still the same as I was before I started. The transformation that I was seeking hadn't happened. And this is what she said to me. She said, "The path of meditation takes many years. You have to practice for many years before you start to realize the benefits." Well, okay, I guess 15 years wasn't anywhere near long enough. Or here's another possible reason why many people don't find the kingdom of heaven, which is that perhaps it's just a random, acausal, spontaneous flash of gnosis that mysteriously falls upon a few for no particular reason, but just passes others by. If so, is there anything you can do to increase your chances of it falling on you? I think I've lost count of the times that I've heard people say that they wish that they could have some kind of definitive experience of God, but it just hasn't happened for them yet. I think of students of Zen whose training involves koans, trying to answer riddles in the form of questions that have no rational answer. Do this long enough and maybe, just maybe, it will cause something in your mind to flip and a flash of illumination will occur. That's the idea. So, do I need to trick my mind with koans or drugs or something else in order to break through to the spiritual realm? To find a loophole in my brain through which I can see the kingdom of heaven? Does God need to be tricked into revealing himself? I suggest that neither of these ideas are the truth, at least not according to Jesus. Entering the kingdom doesn't require us to do years of inner spiritual work, or to play cleverly devised tricks on our own minds. No spiritual practices are involved or needed. It's not a step-by-step process. It's not a process at all. It's something that happens in a moment. But also, it's not a random happening. And no amount of messing about with the way your mind works is going to make it more likely to happen. The main reason people don't find and experience the kingdom of heaven is just because it's hidden in plain sight. It's right in front of us. It always has been. But we're unable to recognize what and where it is. For the simple reason that actually the very nature of the kingdom isn't what people expect. It doesn't conform to our preconceptions or our expectations, and therefore we miss it. I'm going to stay with Jesus' parable a bit longer to try and explain what I mean. Let's suppose the man in the parable was familiar with this field where the treasure was. Suppose he walked through this particular field every day on his way to town where he worked. But for years, right up until the day he found the treasure, he never once suspected there was buried treasure there. Why would he? It had never occurred to him that there was anything of value in that particular field. It was just a place he passed by on his way to work. What a shock to suddenly discover that the very thing that would change his life forever had been hidden in that irrelevant field all that time. But suddenly, in a moment, what he'd for years seen as irrelevant became supremely valuable. And everything he'd previously thought was valuable became totally irrelevant, and he sold it. That, says Jesus, is what the kingdom of God is like. If you're sincerely looking for the truth that will set you free, but you still haven't truly found what you're looking for, it could be because it's hidden in plain sight. It's not hard to find. It's just somewhere you haven't thought of looking for it. It could be that the only thing standing between you and what you're looking for, between you and the kingdom of heaven, is a change of perspective.